Hello and welcome to the 385th episode of The Crate and Crowbar, a podcast about gaming, not just PC gaming. On the day we're recording this, it's the 11th of November 2021, and tonight I'm Alex Wiltshire, and tonight I'm also joined by Chris Thurston.
Hi, Alex Wiltshire. I'm glad that you.
This is the second take of this because of reasons. The first time I called you Christopher Thurston. You seemed pleased about that, and then I wanted to say it again, but then I heard myself saying just Chris Thurston, and I'm sorry about that.
Second takes are always worse than the first takes. It's remarkable, isn't it, how this always goes? But no, I was just delighted that you called me by my full name for some reason. But I can return to that subject a little bit later, I suppose. How are you, Alex? More importantly,
I'm good. I was enlightened. I was enlivened by game news over the last few days. I must admit.
Were you? That's convenient.
I know, it's good, isn't it? I've got a soft spot for a Swedish company called Image and Form, who are the makers of the Steamworld series of kind of different kinds of games, all involving robots in a kind of weird steampunky Western sort of future in space kind of thing. And they've made platformers, and they've made kind of turn-based platformer, 2D turn-based strategies. They've made a long time ago tower defense games. I find them. Each of the games is just beautifully made for its time. Like Steamworld Dig 2, which is a sort of game in which you kind of digging through the earth, kind of bit by bit. There's a story that you're following, and it mixes the sort of Metroidvania with kind of resource gathering, because as you're digging down, you're getting kind of diamonds and whatnot, which you're able to sell for better digging stuff. And as you get deeper down, there are stronger rocks to get through and that kind of thing. This is not a novel concept, because Motherlode, I think, did it first, which is almost exactly the same game design. And I think that's true for all of their games. None of them are at all original, but they do them with they produce them with such verve and skill, and they just feel so good, like the sound effects and animation and that kind of thing, just so good. So they just did an expo yesterday, presented by Mark Hamill, amazingly.
Wow.
And they showed off a little video for a new Steamworld Dig game, which is apparently going to be a third-person adventure. They showed none of the game itself. It seems to involve sharpshooting and a character whose head comes off and does stuff. Who knows what's happening there? But the fact is, they're just such a talented studio whose ambitions have just been rising and rising with, I guess, the success of every game, that I'm looking forward to seeing that.
That sounds great.
What do
I interviewed Mark Hamill once.
I know. I was sort of like catching up with him. It's like, it's Mark Hamill, and he's really not acting very well in this skit that they've put together. Why is any of this happening? In fact, the guy who runs the studio, like the founder of Image and Form, acted, or at least kind of more convincing in his reading of the script than Mark Hamill. It's very odd.
I think my impression of Mark Hamill when I met him was that he's an extremely good sport.
Yeah.
And I think I may have told the story on the podcast before, but I saw him as I went to see part of the filming of Squadron 42, which is Star Citizen's single-player component. And I was so determined not to be a Star Wars fan, to be a very professional journalist, to be like, I am interviewing actor Mark Hamill about his very valid project, Squadron 42. And this was months before The Force Awakens came out as well. So it was like peak Star Wars time. I had editors from other outlets breathing down my neck, asking me for Star Wars scoops out of this access. And I was like, nope, I'm a professional and I've been given this access on certain terms. So I will respect those terms. And there was one other magazine out there, and I won't name them. There's a German outlet, and they literally showed up with a whole bag of plastic lightsabers for him to wave. And he was so up for it. He was great, and and then as soon as I started interviewing him, we just started talking about Star Wars anyway. And I was like, "Oh, you've allowed me to pretend that I'm a professional and get."
You started it, Mark Hamill.
Yeah, exactly. But you started it, Mark. Anyway, so I'm sure he was up for whatever it was that the Steamworld folks wanted him to do.
Exactly. Yeah, no, he's very likable, but it's very. But I suppose Luke Skywalker was never known as being a finely honed, beautifully performed character.
How dare you? Look, we're 6 minutes into this podcast, and we've got to get through at least another hour. So let's not. I think honestly. Oh, you're going to set me off. Oh shit, it's happening. Honestly, he doesn't get enough credit for how good a performance he delivers to some Muppets and some masks in those films.
That is true. That is very
Harrison
true.
Ford. Everyone loves Harrison Ford for good reason, and Carrie Fisher for very good reason. But they get to bounce off each other. Luke Skywalker spends 2 films talking exclusively to puppets and David Prowse pretending to be someone else, right? Like it's, and that's, I'm not just biased. I genuinely believe that. He also looks quite a lot like my dad. It's a really strange environment all around. Anyway, I was buoyed up this week by some news from a little developer I'm fond of. They're from Canada, and they're called BioWare. It was N7 Day this week, which doesn't mean anything. This ostensible Mass Effect holiday. I don't know what it is that we commemorate.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, do you know what the date actually refers to? What is it?
I guess it's like, isn't it like, it can't be as simple as it being November 7, can it?
Is that it? It was just like the aesthetics of the date. Yeah.
I mean, that probably, I think that's it. Anyway, obviously they've said they're making a new Mass Effect. They said it again. We couldn't stop them. They just went and said it again. This time with a poster that I think is pretty cool.
What was the poster of?
It's like an icy world, I guess, which is similar to the teaser trailer they put out some time ago. In which, where there's the icy covering of this icy world has been blasted away to reveal a kind of orange substrata by some kind of impact. But the shape of that impact and the crater that's been left behind, that creates the impression of a big Geth face, the android alien monsters from the original games.
But Chris, we're friends with them now, or are we?
Oh, I don't know. And then parked on this in this crash zone is a new spaceship that looks, it's in the traditional Normandy SR1 coloring, or the Tempest from Andromeda, but it looks a bit different. It's quite Star Trek-y. It's got a big round ass and a pointy face. And those are ship words that I know. And then emerging from this ship are several characters, one of whom is a Krogan in red armor. Could it be Rex? Maybe. And they're approaching another figure who's coming the other way. And it looks like maybe in the center of the crash site, there's something buried, like an alien ruin. It's probably an alien ruin. This is Mass Effect. And then in the ice, it looks like someone's carved something, maybe a dick. I don't know.
I hope so.
What can you take from this? Almost nothing. The text says Mass Effect will continue, which obviously we already knew. And it's a lovely poster. It really is a lovely bit of, design. It's a great teaser. I don't know what to make of it. I'm quite excited for the notion of BioWare doing another kind of full fat RPG is a very pleasing one, because, and this is going to make me feel tremendously old, I think it's been almost a decade since the last one. When was, because, well, no, it's not. Actually, no, it's not. I'm thinking it's been almost a decade since Mass Effect 3.
Yes, exactly. Even you were writing Andromeda out of it.
Of course. Jesus, yeah. Even me, the Andromeda apologist, just wiped out Andromeda. So it's been 5 years since Andromeda, I think. That's true.
But then it's not in that sequence, though, is it? So, there are
no. I was actually, it was funny. I was counting since Dragon Age Inquisition. I can't believe I've just handed my haters so much ammunition there, and I can't believe it. But anyway, I don't know what to expect from this at all. I have a bit of it's funny because I've just done it, but I obviously have a bit of I get weird feelings whenever something comes out that appears to be a response to a fan backlash, and I think this is maybe just an instinctive distaste. But I thought Andromeda was done dirty in a pretty ugly way, despite its flaws. It does have them, as many. Most of which being maybe wasn't that memorable in hindsight. I occasionally when the sort of like the apology sequel happens, I get a bit shirty. I very much feel this way about Ghostbusters at the moment. There's a new Ghostbusters film. I have no idea if it's good or not, but I'm instinctively turned against it. Not because the Ghostbusters film back in 2017, I think, was amazing, but because it got such an ugly backlash that I don't want them. I don't want those angry fans to get a kind of, pat on the head. Yeah. So I'm saying I don't know how to feel about this. I really don't. I just think the spaceship looks nice, and away. Yeah.
I mean, talking as someone who's only heard your description of this, it does sound like a series of just icons that are designed to reassure you. It's got your friends in it, is what it seems to be saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's only
as opposed to here's some story, which is what a lot of teasers tend to do. They kind of try to sort of set up the place of a story, or be a jumping off point for a story.
Yeah, I think.
But this one is like, there ain't no story there, really. It's just like, there's your friends. Don't worry, everybody.
There's such huge questions that any potential Mass Effect sequel needs to answer, because the easiest possible Mass Effect sequel to make is a sequel to Andromeda, because it set it up in a huge way. Andromeda really was the first part of a series, and they're obviously not going to make that game. But if they choose to make part of it, that'd be interesting. But obviously the teaser trailer had, Liara in it. So obviously this means it's part of the main series. I don't know. And the thing about the series is it reinvented itself so much that I don't know what this means from a mechanical point of view, or indeed any. So I will continue to look at the pictures they show me as and when they're ready to show them. And those are all the feelings I've really got about it. We may have more robust feelings about Elden Ring. Suddenly, despite it, having been sort of barely shown for a long time, and now recently sort of delayed, only by a month. Loads of people have played Elden Ring, and there's been tons of long game videos out. Have you had a chance to imbibe that stuff?
I've not read any of them, but I did watch the video. I was watching it. I did done the video. I hadn't really thought much about Elden Ring beyond being just excited and very much wanted to know what it was going to be. I didn't know whether people had figured out or just assumed or anything about it being open world. And it came, and I was not sure whether I was right to be sort of surprised or delighted, but surprised by it, and sort of like, oh, yes, this is exactly what it should be, which is what I thought. But and I was wondering whether that was the right thing to think. Chris, tell me.
Look, there's no such thing as the wrong thing to think. Actually, that's not true. It really isn't true.
That really isn't true.
Within the safe parentheses of this conversation, I suspect you couldn't go wildly wrong. You know what I mean? Like, you can break out of your playpen, but you're just going to hit some soft furnishing somewhere else in this very specific context. Otherwise, the doings of your brain are your own to manage. But in this case, I don't think that's wildly off. I think it was only in this recent sort of set of reveals that I understood how much of an open world game it is, right? Like what that means. Because obviously, Souls games and Sekiro specifically have had quite expansive environments mixed in among the kind of more linear bits. I'm excited about it because I don't think, From Software have necessarily set a foot wrong yet. I do have this sense that it's not like the game I would have chosen to see from them, in a sense. And I mean that primarily because the game I would have chosen to see from them is another Bloodborne, or just a remastered Bloodborne, or just Bloodborne, or just me playing Bloodborne.
A new copy of Bloodborne.
Yeah, exactly. Me going to CEX and buying a different copy of Bloodborne and pretending. But I think I sort of trust them that they'll do interesting things with this formula, because I could see in the sort of the placement of icons on the map and the sort of self-set direction, like the influence of Breath of the Wild, which is an amazing thing.
Very much so, yeah.
For the Souls formula to draw from, because it is always drawn from Zelda. And actually, like, I think that's an interesting kind of paradigm for it to follow.
But I think the Breath of the Wild was definitely had Dark Souls on its mind.
Right. But it's a nice case of recursive influence, right? In terms of, but I've been playing Demon Souls very slowly on the PS5, and the thing I find enormously comforting about that is the sense of closed loops and routes and limited areas to explore. There's a certain anxiety I get from open worlds, that I hope it doesn't have. I mean, actually, and I found Breath of the Wild was one of the better games for kind of getting past that. But I do think that one of the things I traditionally love about Souls games is the sense that they are conquerable, ultimately, when you persevere. And I'll be interested to see how that feeling, which is often, that often comes through level design. It often comes from like the elation of a shortcut or the discovery that you really have conquered an area. And I'd be interested to see how if they choose to try and recreate some of those feelings in an open world context. This isn't a moan. I think it does look amazing. It's more of a kind of like, my reaction to open world wasn't maybe what yours was, which is like, oh, this makes total sense. To me, it was like, oh, this introduces a whole bunch of interesting complexity. That
I should probably sort of qualify that in that I think that two. I mean, I'm just basically agreeing with you, which is that two kind of fundamental things about the Souls series are this incredible control over your access to places. You know, the order in which you do things. You know, yes, you can somewhat sequence break, but only under the control of the game. And yes, you can, you know, you're generally, you know, encountering very carefully placed things in open worlds. That is very different. And then also, you know, enemies, usually you're encountering them from certain directions, and, you know, the flavor of an encounter is very much defined by its setup. And that in an open world is very different. And I'm totally fascinated to see how they capture the rigor. Now, I think that Sekiro is definitely, like, I think the thing to think about, because those big open areas and bosses that you kind of can usually circle all the way around before you actually engage them, and then fight them in quite a wide area. I think that is, I guess, the kind of the benchmark that this is bouncing from. God, that's a terrible phrasing, isn't it? Bouncing from a benchmark.
They were using the benchmark as like a kind of like a gymnastics horse, I guess.
It's a little flex in it.
There is a horse in it, like a horse goat thing. You know, you can make that work somehow. No, it looks cool. Like, I think it's funny, like, in that context, in the context of so many things being so new, I love that the spirit of Oblivion is retained in their weird looking faces. And the strange posture of all of their characters.
Yeah. The little clump that, you know, when they sort of land on their feet, you know, it's like this little particular sound effect, and just the gait of the run and things like that is, it's like coming over. The sort of whooshy rush of someone somewhere dying.
Like, it's all very good stuff. Yeah, like it's cool that they're being so open about what it is as well, this far ahead of the game's launch. For it to go from like, we haven't seen anything except a logo really, and a suggestion of some knights maybe, to like having a fairly good sense of what the game is, seems very healthy. So good for them for managing hype well, I think. It's the kind of thing you can do when you know you're onto a good game, but it's nice to see it nonetheless.
Wonder what our J.R.R. Tolkien did it.
JRPG Tolkien.
JRPG Tolkien.
I think I nicked that joke from Neil Kukureja.
I wonder what he done. I mean, I've heard a description of what he did, but I wonder what he done.
George R.R. Martin?
Yeah.
Probably just named the trees or something. You know what narrative designers do. You come in after the game's been made to explain why the doors don't open. Or why they do. Or the conditions in which they might. That's it. That's the entire discipline.
Yeah.
So what have you been playing, Alex?
Well, I've been playing a game that I almost like quite a lot.
Wow. Don't commit too hard.
I know. I've been playing Graniads of the Galaxy. the very chatty action RPG and all sorts of other things. It's such a weird game. It's so weird. I don't
really know anything about it, so feel free to unpack it for me.
Okay. So what we have is an attempt to recreate the joy of the films fundamentally. Like, while they haven't got any of the likenesses from the films itself, there are the costumes though, so they do have some sort of licensing sort of clout with it.
Just
obviously
no Pratt.
Yeah, no Pratt. And I don't think I've got any of the actors doing any of the voices. So it's got the peppy dialogue. It's got the raccoon guy and the tree guy, and it's a buddy film through wacky Marvel inflected sort of space adventure. And it's very pretty. But it mixes in so many different games, You have Uncharted style traversal of environments where you're squeezing between rocks and shuffling along ledges and climbing up other ledges and all those kinds of things.
Just a ton of different ways to interact with a cliff.
You've got this that sort of almost. I mean, it's third person kind of arena battles. Fundamentally, you're in this closed off area and you're going to be fighting a lot, and that's, while you've got a ranged weapon, you do have a melee attack as well. It definitely seems to want to. It definitely references things like Devil May Cry. It has a little gauge in the corner which sort of tells you marvelous when you're fighting. I have no idea what it's measuring. I have no idea what it even gives you. Unlike, Devil May Cry, which is very rigorous about that kind of thing. And the battling, it's, the fighting itself is very mushy and doesn't have any of the control and depth of Devil May Cry. But it's definitely looking at those games and going, I want some of that. In the way that, it's also not an Uncharted game because it's not as interesting and interested in giving you amazing vistas to look at and all that kind of thing. Which is not to say there aren't amazing vistas in it. It's just that that's not what you're doing. It has a scan mode, which is a bit like Metroid Prime. So you're kind of like going into this thing and seeing everything, all the colors going weird, and you have to kind of hold down a button on stuff as you're looking at it to see a little description about it. There are narrative choices and characters reacting in different ways or subtle ways, or it wants you to think they're reacting in subtle ways to choices you make, just like Telltale games. There is the sort of a sort of modern Final Fantasy style group battling kind of dynamic kind of mechanics going on, where you've got the other characters who are autonomously jumping around, but you can give them orders to do stuff, and you're giving them skills and things to deploy in battle as well. It's really, none of the games there and none of the things there are surprising in and of themselves as something that a big budget kind of comic film Marvel tie-in game might have, but the sheer density and variety of them makes it just feels quite bewildering from time to time, because there's just so much going on and there are so many ideas in it that just don't really go anywhere. So looking at the combat itself, it's so mushy. This is a game that kind of prides itself on, there's lots of animation going on, and it means that you, as Peter Quill, Chris Pratt, not Chris Pratt, he has his two guns, which are your principal weapons. He has them holstered at his side, and in order to shoot them, it fully animates him reaching down to them, getting them up, putting them up, and then shooting them, which is a good, quarter second. And in an action game, quarter second is kind of critical, and it makes it so mushy. Your shots don't really do that much damage, but they're kind of relatively rapid firing. But then your guns then overheat, and then there's this overheat mechanic. So you've got to kind of, like it's basically reloading, and there's an active reload aspect to it, which is kind of mushy feeling and inexact and not very tactical. Doesn't feel great ever. The way that you order your other characters around, it's fine. It's fine. Like they do have roles, like the tree. The Groot has an ability which kind of entangles enemies in roots in place and holds them down so they're not attacking you, and making your attacks on them easier. Rocket, the raccoon, has this explosive shot which does huge damage. Drax has a kind of a very powerful attack, which doesn't do much damage. But there's another. I forgot about this mechanic. There is a kind of balance. I can't remember what the terminology, but it's a little like the one. Let's say it's got Sekiro in it as well, because there's this sort of balance,
like a
poise gauge, and if you fill that gauge by pummeling them enough, then they become stunned, and you can do extra attacks on them and that kind of thing. Why not shove it in? Why the fuck not? But none of it feels kind of critical to engage with, or particularly well communicated to you in the thick of battle. Battles are kind of chaotic, and in order to make these four characters fighting together believable, or at least functional, I suppose, rather than believable. It's the opposite of believable. When you ask Drax to pummel somebody, he deals big poise damage basically, rather than physical damage. When he does that, you actually see him just blink across the battlefield to where you asked him to. He has to, of course he does, but it does call into question the whole concept of having these kind of live AI characters under your direct control and yet autonomous. But it's just odd. I'm going to just criticize it. I could criticize it for hours, really, because it's also a game where it wants to be peppy and with the characters constantly sort of pissing, trying to take the piss out of each other and arguing with each other and with one-liners and quips and all this sort of stuff, when it's meant to be breezy and fun and funny and stuff. And remarkably, given the sheer density of the amount of dialogue in the game, it's amazing how much of it works and how much unique dialogue there is. Pretty much someone will comment on almost everything that you do. This is including going off down a different way to the central route because you figure there might be a pickup there, some sort of resource pickup to find. Someone will comment on it, depending on a choice that you made. There aren't that many choices, but there are choices, and another comment will be made. It's difficult to define how much branching stuff is really going on, but characters come and go, and they get pissed off with things that you've chosen to do. And I think during the preview sequence, the preview time before it came out, the thing that they showed off, this is Eidos Montreal, makers of the Deus Ex recent games. But I say recent, Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Once it came out in the last 10 years.
That's recent to me. They showed off the first mission of the game, in which you are you're trying to earn a load of money to pay a fine off, and the plan is to sell either Rocket or Groot to a kind of like exotic alien collector, and then steal Rocket or Groot back afterwards. And depending on who you choose to sell off, the other characters and that character will react against you. So I chose Groot to sell off, and Rocket just was very angry about it all the time. And, I don't know what happens in the other way. I'm not going to replay this game. But, I think it kind of trades on the fact that nobody's going to replay it. But there's a huge density of it, and it's amazing how much of it hits home. Obviously not all of it at all. Like, they're just talking all the time, Chris. Talking. At one volume as well, shouting during battles. And I'm in a secret, like towards the end of the game now. There's a lot of fighting, and I could swear that the voice actors are sounding very hoarse. They sound
I'm sure they
ragged.
recorded it in order. Yeah.
Yeah, they almost sound.
Actually, they do it live for you, Alex. Every time
Yeah, they're
again,
doing it.
they phone in.
Like, and yet oh yeah, it's got a journal in it. You know, those that kind of modern thing where in third person action game and the character, your character is filling in a journal as they go. It's very Uncharted. And it's kind of fun to see them drawing and stuff. This game has a journal in it as well, and it's shit. It's really shit. It's like it's got this Comic Sans font, so it hasn't got any kind of handwritten feel to it, and the pictures are really bad, and the writing's not very good. And it's just sort of like, why put it in? Just why?
So,
Why?
You've said that this is a game that I think I can feel. Tell me if this is wrong, but this feels like a game that you like despite yourself or it.
I think it's a bit of both of us. I mean, there is just this verve to it. It doesn't. It's throwing so much at you. I think that part of it is this kind of lovable, just how scrappy it all is and how thrown together it all is, and just the audacity to do so much for this game. I wonder why, and I wonder whether actually part of the reason why is that it's a big expensive game to make and also to buy. You know, it's a full price kind of main game, and it's looking like it's going to be about 12-15 hours. And I suppose there is replayability if you want to really see what happens if you throw Groot in to the alien collector instead. But it's not going to affect the story at all. But it just zips along. It zips along, and there's nothing that really holds you up. The battle, the combat is fairly easy. I've restarted quite a lot, but it just sort of zips along in this kind of, and it isn't inoffensive, but it just seems to have a rhythm to it. And I think that's my memory of the films as well, where I enjoyed them, but I couldn't really say anything about them. Now I remember a mood. It was kind of irrepressible, and that's this game as well. It's sort of irrepressibly just scrappy, and that really sort of feeds into the kind of the setup of the team that you're with, who are meant to be scrappy, and they're kind of terrible at being the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're kind of venal and silly, but they got a heart of gold. And weirdly enough, this game has that same sort of feeling, and despite all of it, I'm kind of enjoying it, and I've been playing it sort of to the exclusion of other things, over the past week.
After all of this, are you identifying that this game is assonant in a very specific way?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's all there's some really sort of funny little kind of details in it as well. They're like, it is full of details, like the ship that you kind of like is your base. I mean, it's just it's a linear story, and you occasionally return to your ship, and there's a scene on there. There are loads of things to explore on the ship. All the characters have a room, and there's little kind of side bits to look at and objects to kind of turn over in your hand. Oh yeah, it has kind of picking up objects and turning them over in your hand. That mechanic, was that from
Uncharted?
Uncharted.
It's very
yeah.
Or Tomb Raider.
I think wasn't it the oh god, it's the one where you going home.
Oh yeah, Gone Home.
Yeah, Gone Home is the pick up things game, isn't it? Anyway,
yeah,
has that. Anyway, has that too.
Yeah.
But there's so much detail to it. At the start of the very game, the very, very start, you're young Peter Quill, a boy, still living at home in this kind of incredibly detailed kind of sort of farmhouse. And every room is sort of lovingly constructed. And his room is just filled with, 80s bait, kind of Stranger Things bait, kind of. And he's listening to Star-Lord, which is the name of his favorite rock band, kind of made up band. And it's the kind of what he has on his back. He calls himself Star-Lord in the comics. And that's sort of what he wants. One of the jokes is that, this kind of dorky kid has come into, is living the dream of actually being a kind of a cool spaceman. And he's telling everyone he's called Star-Lord. Anyway, there's a Rolling Stone, copy of Rolling Stone on the bed next to you, and you can kind of look over and pick it up and read it. And they've written a whole article about Star-Lord. He's listening to their music on a cassette on his Walkman, and there's a cassette inlay fully all the lyrics, everything. It looks like an 80s cassette inlay, like the detail. Like in his room, he's got a copy of Death Trap Dungeon, the fighting fantasy book, just there. And the reason I'm sure is that it was written by Ian Livingstone, who at least he used to be CEO of IDOS, which is kind of like who basically kind of didn't make the game, but anyway, has a deep connection to what Square Enix, which is the publisher of the game now. There's just so much little things like that. There's a fridge door which keeps being open on the ship, and like every time you go past it, like it's open and you can close it, just go up to it and press a button. And the fridge at home is also left open as well. Like just little things like that. I like that. I like these little things. But oh my God, what the hell? Oh, there's one other thing. There's this bizarre like super attack. It's called what's it called? Huddle or something. It's so weird. This is like a Persona thing, ripped out of Persona or something. Oh, when you're in combat, you'll gather kind of pep power or whatever. When it fills, you can press the trigger, the sort of shoulder buttons, and suddenly all the characters then, like the backdrop sort of fades away, all goes colourful, and all the characters run towards you. You're in first person all of a sudden, and they're all like huddled in towards you, like you're having a pep talk, and the characters start saying lines about their emotional state at the time. Like maybe they're overconfident, or maybe nothing's going right, and what are they going to do? And these guys are too strong. And then you have like a choice of response, one of which is obviously wrong, and the other one is obviously right. Oh, they're too strong. No, we're the Guardians of the Galaxy. We're really good at fighting. And then you say that, and they'll go, yeah! And then they go up. And then Hang Tough comes on, like, a new kids on the block, Hang Tough. And you fight, and all of your superpowers kind of charge up faster and all that kind of crap. It's like, what? Why is this here? It's so cheesy, and it doesn't really develop anything. Like the pep talk is just randomized, because I've had the same one a couple of times, I think. It's so odd. So odd.
But did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed fighting with Hang Tough playing. Yeah,
exactly. There it is.
So it was worth it. It's such a weird game.
You seem so torn. That's what gets me about this. It's like, it seems like a lot of people seem to be really enjoying it, but having a similar reaction of like, I'm really enjoying this, but there's some part of your critical faculty that is fighting you. Maybe you should just let it go, man. Do you need
Mark should be really angry. I don't think he would get as far as me.
Do you need a huddle, Alex?
I think we all need a huddle, Chris.
Yeah, just, you're like, I don't know if I can like this. It seems dumb. And I'm like, look, they're all dumb. And then
all right,
there's
one last thing I want to moan about, though. This is
okay.
This is a critical fucking problem. At the start of the game, you're given a fine of 10,000 space credits or something like that. It's a lot. Apparently that's a lot of money. How are they going to find all these funds, Chris? Anyway, you do. It is a spoiler, but it's not a spoiler. You get the money. It's what you have to do with the money is the thing. However, you go to this kind of space station place, this free roam place, and there's a kind of like a street food stall there. A kebab costs 500 space bucks. So we've been told that 10,000 space bucks is an untold amount of money.
Right. But it's actually 20 kebabs.
It's 20 kebabs.
Right.
What the fuck?
What's a kebab? About £4 nowadays?
Let's say. No. £6 to £8, I would say.
£6 to £8. So let's go on an upper bound. Let's say 8. Okay. For a kebab.
8 times 20.
8, so 160.
160 quid. 160 quid.
160 quid. That's quite a lot. Like, that's enough to go, oof. You know what I mean?
Is it enough to
sell a raccoon?
To get your best friend and sell them to some sort of trafficker?
Probably not, no. But you're planning to rescue them back. I'm glad you've raised this because it's a clearly critical
It's
issue.
important. So fuck this game. Marsh's notional reaction to this is correct. Well, what have you been playing?
Well, so this game we're going to talk about, but the thing I've been playing a ton of recently, speaking of things that you have a complicated relationship with liking, I've just been playing tons of Cyberpunk lately.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
I played like 45 hours of it. I'm taking it really slowly. I think I genuinely really like that game. I'll probably return to it.
Are you in the kind of hooked kind of,
it's just something. Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I'll probably return to it maybe on the pod when I finished it, and I'm definitely on the kind of the downward slope now. I just think it's got so many obvious flaws and so many visible flaws, and obviously didn't live up to the marketing, etc., etc. We've been all over all of this, but I'm just finding it to be like a really sort of kind of engaging, narrative-driven RPG with a lot of heart, a lot of very good writing, and game systems that I like well enough. Right, like I played tons of these games where the underlying game itself was not great at all. Games like Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, which I would say this is so much like in so many ways. This feels like one of those games, but given in a huge budget with all the precarity that entails. And I'm just really, really enjoying it. Like I'm in the position where I'm just mopping up every single, quest, every single thing to do, every warehouse to break into on the map. And there's a surprising amount of detailed writing or kind of specific kind of narrative work done even for those. But I've settled into my playstyle as well. I don't really mind that. I am the scary woman who breaks into corporate buildings, switches people's eyes off, steals things, and leaves.
Oh yeah, the switching eyes off thing. Yeah, I had that.
Yeah, and I just really like it. Like I think it's got so many obvious flaws, but it's interesting. Almost coming up to a year since it came out to kind of look at it from the eyes of like what is this actually as a game. And I don't think there are too many games like it, actually, at the moment, in terms of like meaningful narrative experiences with a lot of good storytelling of that kind, rendered with that level of fidelity. There are plenty of great narrative games at the moment, but I mean rendered at that kind of like level of fidelity or that with that amount of money invested. It's probably one of my favorite Keanu Reeves performances in anything ever. He's great. And yeah, so that's that for that. But I kind of I'm a bit wary. I think I said this in chat, but like Cyberpunk feels like but a huge can of worms and mostly just a massive can. Like I don't know what the worms are actually doing. So I'm going to talk instead about a game I've just started playing, but I played maybe a couple of hours of now this morning, and then at lunchtime, which is a big game at the moment, Forza Horizon 5, which seems to have taken off enormously, I think, in part because it's on Game Pass. I don't think I would have tried it if it wasn't on Game Pass. And I'm going to get this with two things. One, this is my first Forza Horizon game. I appreciate that there's been 10 years of these now. And secondly, I'm not like a big car person. Like I quite like racing games, but like I'm not someone who really gives a shit about cars. And this is a car collecting game, so there is that element to it. But I was interested to come to it partly because I've heard really good things about the series, and partly because it's famous for being so slick. I was really interested in how the start of the game pans out, and it really is. Like, so if you're not aware, Forza Horizon is like an open world driving game. You do races and stunts and events and various other things to build up a big selection of cars, which you can paint and upgrade in a million different ways. Set against the backdrop of a kind of motor rings festival that takes over apparently an entire country forever once it arrives.
Remind me what country it's taken over this time?
This is in Mexico.
Mexico.
Beautiful Mexico. And one thing really interesting about it is I want to talk about it as a race game, but so its introduction is like hype dialed up to 11. And
so tell me about your experience of it, because you haven't played one of those introductions before, have you?
But I'd heard about them. I heard Graham talk about them. Right. Like, it's so. Have you played Forza 5?
Not 5 yet, no.
Okay, it's so slick. And one thing I thought was really admirable about it is like, and it struck me immediately, is like this game has taken the task of accessibility really, really, really seriously. So its accessibility options may be the best I've ever seen in the game, including like having audio description of what's happening on the screen on until you turn it off at the beginning. Like you're almost immediately given the option to turn it off, but it's there for the very beginning. Like this is how you use a controller. This is what button prompts are currently on the screen. Like amazing kind of support for sort of partially sighted people and so on. And everything is intended to be this slick on-ramp, literally onto into this experience, which is intended to feel as warm and inclusive and accepting as it possibly can. And so the game, the plot is apparently, it's a bit like, imagine, if you will, an extremely positive Mortal Kombat, where a big plane kidnaps people from around the world and deposits them in the best time of their lives. And so you start with the big Horizon plane flies overhead and drops you out of the back into a volcano as it's erupting, and you're already like, you're just told like, you know, right trigger is accelerate, fucking go. And you're just racing down the hill. And this is a mix of you're actually driving, but there's scripted elements and cars leaping into view and things like that. And it introduces all the key elements one by one: drive, steer, brake, and then rewind. You're also the prince from Prince of Persia, but a car. And like one after another in this extremely slick like series of vignettes where like it will, you know, the car that's racing down the mountain will skid around a corner and out of sight, and the plane is back. Oh shit, it's the plane. And now the plane is dropping a rally car into the jungle, and now you're going through the jungle, and wow, is that a temple? Better drive straight over it. Whee! And then oh wow, it's the plane again, and now you're kind of being dropped out of the plane in your supercar to race to the finish line to join the Horizon Festival. They're all waiting for you. You are the best driver in the entire world. You're the superstar. You're so great. Ah! And it's screaming, and the music is incredibly loud, and it's all like everything is at a certain BPM where it's just sort of driving you forward constantly. And it's genuinely super fucking exciting. And that's basically like the level the game maintains as well. Like it doesn't stop. It just keeps going. And for me, I was like, I'm into this, right? Like, this is making me feel very welcome. It's very exciting. It's wholesome, but maybe not wholesome to a fault. I think at that time it is. I'll get to that. But like, there's this sense that everything is okay. It's like you've died and gone to like race car land. Like I make notes when I play games, and I know I'm going to talk about them on the pod. And the note I made, and I didn't really know what the context of this at the time was, everything was race cars and nothing hurt. Like everything is okay and you're a car, and everything is upbeat all the time, and it gets more and more so. And so I'm like racing along, and you skid into the finish line, and then it's like, you know, it's time to introduce yourself. You're the superstar. You're the grand champion. You're the best person there's ever been. Fuck hell, it's you. I love you. But make your character. And like, I didn't want to get lost in character creation, and it's also not like super granular. It's like there's about like 20 pre-made characters, and then you can change the hairstyle and the hair color, and then and it's you know, wonderfully inclusive in that regard, in that you can also give them prosthetics. You can you know, robust choice of pronouns. Like they've done a really good job. You've got meaningful choice of voice regardless of body type, etc. Really well done. And in the background, but while you're choosing, like the MC of the festival is on the radio, like going like, gotta get out there. They want to meet you, superstar. They're going to meet you. They're going to meet you. Hurry the fuck up. You're in a menu. You don't want to be in a menu. You want to be in a car. Vroom. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. But I was like, you know what? I am not interested in like playing myself in these games. I'm going to make a cool looking lady, because like a lot of the dudes looked a bit kind of gawky and awkward. So I was like, and I didn't really like the masculine voice. So I was like, I'm going to make a cool looking lady. And I drop into the game, and then it's like my car pulls out onto this massive stage. It's like I'm on the main stage at Glastonbury, and suddenly everyone's screaming. And then it says, welcome to Forza Horizon, Christopher. And I'm like, what the fuck is this haunted shit? Like, and it turns out it looks at your Xbox profile, which I barely use, and takes your actual name. And if it can match your actual name to one of the names in the list, it's a very long list, it will call you by that. And obviously, because it's like attached to my Microsoft account, which is attached to my real full name, Christopher, rather than Chris, I suddenly have this extreme kind of like uncomfortable discordance of the game bellowing my real name at me while my cool avatar walks out onto the stage. And I have no idea why they didn't give you a chance to confirm your name. It feels like, I mean, in my case, I was merely kind of like a bit kind of like knocked out by it. Like I actually thought about, I immediately closed the game, went on Google, how do you How do you start the game again? And how do you pick your name in advance? Because I was like, this seems like a really cool moment if it lands, right? But it didn't land, and you can't. You can never actually reset your account ever.
You're
You
Chris
can never
forever.
redo that open. Yeah, but you can change your name when you get in game. So I've changed it to Chris now, and you got the full set of the big list. I have no idea whether it was. I don't think it's a critical flaw, but for me, it was one of the. For me, it was alienating. I can imagine for someone else, it may even be kind of very disconcerting to have whatever name is on your Xbox account suddenly bellowed at you. But it's this attempt to be so welcoming that it almost bends over backwards to kind of usher you into this experience. In that case, it backfired massively because I did try making someone who looked like myself, and he looked awful. And so I just undid it, and I was like, I'm just going to go with the coolest looking options I can see. And then, but even then, when I log into the game, it's like, hey, Chris, welcome back. How are you doing? Oh, God, I've got so much great driving. We love driving. We love you. And so since then, so you get that off into the world, and it's this big open world, and tons of different events. Some of them are like races that you load into, which could be street races or rally races or sprints across the countryside or all sorts of different drag races. You can do, there are events in the world like trying to hit, speed traps, which is like trying to hit a certain speed as you go past a certain point. And it's sort of soft multiplayer so that you can like occasionally there's almost like, Destiny style world events. Like everyone go here and just drift like fucking crazy for a bit and get points and share the points. And you're getting stuff constantly, and there's tons of like, there's both deep kind of mechanical customization of the cars themselves, which I don't understand anything about. And then there's upgrading the cars themselves, which is a separate thing. Then there's painting the cars themselves, which is a separate thing. And then there's the internal upgrade system for a given car, which is more about it's more like every car is like a kind of has its own Diablo styled skill tree, which all that does is unlock XP and new stuff like new cars, which have their own trees, and everything in the game gets you points. And all of the time, everything is fucking delighted by you.
Yeah.
Constantly. Yeah. You have these radio stations. It's like a decent selection of music. And the radio stations each have their own DJs, and the DJs are all, most of the main characters are English. I think maybe it's because the developers, but like there's this sense that this is and I think it's because the previous game was set in the UK. There's this sense of like a UK festival, like Reading Festival, has been moved to Mexico and given more money than God. It's like Party in the Park or something. And all of the DJs, they're really good performances of like radio DJs. And there's so many granular little things, like the news that comes on between songs will be like, hey guys, we just heard there's a really cool car in the barn near where the superstar is. Hope they get it. Hope they share it with me. Anyway, back to the music. And it's like this shit constantly. And it's like almost overwhelming. And I realized something as I was playing. It started to get to the point where I was like, oh fuck, where is even like a tiny bit of like tone balancing darkness here? Anything at all. Because you can't do anything without the game praising you for it. If you drive clean, you get awards for driving clean. If you break stuff, you get awards for breaking stuff. The concept of a speed trap in post Horizon Festival Mexico means this is a challenge to go very fast, not this is a reason you don't go very fast. If you do like a huge fucking power slide around a corner and narrowly miss some presumably civilian transit van coming the other way, you get points for great near miss. It's like, and meanwhile, characters will meaningfully intone to you about what a superstar you are, but how important family is and what the culture of Mexico truly means to them, and how all of these things, how there is no greater expression of human anything than driving a car. Fuck. And like, I realized something as I was playing it, which is that another great game, and I think it probably is a great game, another great game about family and holidays and having a well-needed break, which also has the word Horizon in its title, Animal Crossing, genuinely has more bite than this does. Like there's more of a kind of like wink and more of an edge to Animal Crossing's writing than there is to Forza's. Yeah. Forza it's like, and it does. I appreciate there's so much to say about it as a racing game, and I am enjoying it. I just don't feel like I can kind of speak with any expertise about whether it's a great racing game or a good racing game. From reviews and what people are saying, it feels like a great racing game, right? Like I'm certainly having a good time with it. lots of smart difficulty setting stuff, tons of granularity, meaningfully diverse events. I really like it. Looks gorgeous. There's tons of cars. I feel myself sort of very rabbit in the headlights, quite literally, about all of that. But I find its tone fascinating because, in a way, it feels like quite a kind of pointed. If it has any edge at all, it's that it's such a kind of bullish rejection of the tone that all games feel the need to take. Right, like if a to me on something. To the extent that driving a car dangerously is a bad thing to do, and shooting a gun is a bad thing to do, and games allow us to find the entertainment value in both of these things, there certainly isn't a shooter that loves you and guns in the way that this game loves you and driving dangerously. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's really fascinating.
I've been trying to trace where this stuff comes from, because this stuff has been in racing games sort of for a while. Like, weirdly, it's all British studios. So it was definitely in the Criterion's Burnout series, which was, rewarding you for near misses. Like that's where that's from, driving in oncoming traffic, all that kind of thing. It's, super arcadey, but kind of, set in real cities. The radio station thing, that's definitely from Burnout. There's also Bizarre Creation stuff. So so that invented the QDOS system, which would just reward you with points for everything you did, as long as
Yeah.
And that's in there. I'm trying to remember, there was a racer, like an off-road racer on PS3, and that was the series that kind of kicked off the whole idea of kind of festivals, like celebrating doing
Dirt,
the driving.
was it?
No, it's not Dirt. It's
I know what you mean, though. But this is the thing; it feels very much part of that legacy, and it's really interesting as part of that legacy.
Although Dirt did take on the festival thing, but I think it was done first by this PS3 one. But what was that studio? The studio died since. But thing is, I think that all of those developers kind of have been distilled. They've all kind of moved into this, like, it's made by Playground, isn't it? And I'm pretty sure the Playground is basically made up of kind of ex-staff from all of these studios who've kind of distilled these things that they've learned about kind of making rewarding racing games.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you could identify the slightly cynical edge in it, in the sense that it kind of feels tuned to what a lot of games want to be, which is that sense of being a festival and a hangout space. It feels like, Age of Fortnite racing game to some extent, right? This is a big party and you're invited. On the other hand, it does feel like a maturation of all of those themes, going back to things like Wipeout as well, right? This notion that games can have cool music, they can be hooked into culture in a way. They can be part of a broader kind of visual, musical culture, design culture, and so on. And like, it's the standard of its, design, its visuals, and I think a lot of the music is really good. I think, and it's nice, I think, to see that, because I associate, at least, because I played a lot of these games when I was growing up, I associate that era of British racing game development really closely also with like the lad maggiest elements of games in that era, right? And I think Forza 5, Horizon 5 shows what happens when you utterly shed that, right? There isn't a sniff of it. That kind of slightly, like, not maybe wouldn't always be factored into the games themselves, but you better believe that the advert you saw for like Metropolis Street Racer or something.
Have you driven a car so fast down someone's ass that their brain comes out of their head?
Right. Like, it wouldn't be that. That'd be Carmageddon, right? But no, it would be like an inexplicable stock image of a lingerie model next to a photo of the game box, and it would be like, "Are you a big enough boy to drive the big car?"
That's better. Yeah, that's better.
That's the era I associate a lot of those games with, and it's gone, and it's great that it's gone. I do think in some ways, though, Forza Horizon steps over this tonal bridge from simply, "We're delighted that you're here, this whole place is for you, have fun with it," which I think is a great stance for a video game to take, and a very appropriate one. And I think the step beyond would be to establish this isn't happening at the expense of actual Mexico. It's all virtual reality, maybe. Because it feels like that. But it steps beyond that to this point where people are complimenting you so frequently and with such earnestness that it started to make me a little bit uncomfortable. Not in a sort of like, oh, this is cloyingly kind of wholesome way necessarily, but in the way that, have you ever been in a situation where you're like, for example, you're at a festival and someone is being so nice to you and so effusively positive about you that you're not sure if you're having a really meaningful life moment or if they are high. You know what I mean? Like there's this sort of sense of like you'll like skid around a corner and you'll hit a cactus and a big thing will come up and say "Smacktus" and you get some points. And then someone would be like, "Great job, superstar. You're also a wonderful father." And you're like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, there's this sort of slight sense of looking at someone else's pupils and seeing them utterly dilated at the sight of you, and that's what playing this game feels like. Yeah, you feel like you maybe need to like get them some water. Like I feel a powerful need to get everyone in Horizon 5, Forza Horizon 5, Horizon Horza 5, a bottle of water and a sit down because it may be a bit much.
It's okay, Forza Horizon.
I'm really enjoying it. It's like, I think I will definitely keep playing it, and I think on its own merits as an open world game, it's so generous with things to do quickly, kind of dip into and do, that I think it also makes a good case for the kind of sea of map icons open world design. I think it worked well here because it doesn't need a narrative to stitch it together, although there are like little narratives to discover and little adventures to go on. It's not trying to sell you a serious world, it's trying to sell you a playground, and I think is a very appropriate use of that format. There's also a very funny thing that's happening at the moment. I don't know if you're aware of this, but people have come across an exploit which involves a funny word. So I could tell you that story if you like.
Tell us the funny word.
So basically, in the game, every car, as I say, has its own like little internal upgrade grid, and the most valuable node on any of these is an upgrade grid that gets you a wheel spin. A wheel spin is like a wheel of fortune. You spin it, and you're either going to get some money or a new car. But they're very valuable things. The game's constantly. It's just like a loot box you have to buy. You're constantly spinning this wheel. It's just engage. But even more valuable than a wheel spin is a super wheel spin, which spins 3 wheels at once, and you get 3 prizes. Incredible. Not every car has one of these nodes, but when they do, it's very likely that whatever you get from that triple node is going to be worth more than the value of the car. And this is particularly the case in the case of one Jeep, a 1945 Willys Jeep. Which you can buy for a certain amount and then upgrade just enough to get the triple spin, and that's often worth more than the value of the Willys. However, once you've got a Willys, you've got a Willys forever, unless you sell it on the auction house, which is the only way to then, once it's gone, buy a new Willys, upgrade the Willys again, have another spin, and so on, in order to kind of farm more and more money. And then players discovered that there is a faster way to get rid of your Willys than to put them on the 24-hour auction house for cars. The fastest way to get rid of the Willys is to gift them, because there is a random gifting system where you can effectively give up a car that you love and another player will receive it while exploring the open world as a kind of random gift. And it's intended to create these moments of like one-off stranger generosity between players. But what players have realized is this is the fastest way to get rid of your Willys, so you can get a new Willys, and all you want is more Willys. And there's a wonderful PC Gamer story explaining this by Morgan Park, and I'm not sure if they were aware of how many times they used the word Willys, but it's incredible. But what this means is, and when you receive it means that the gift ecosystem of the game has been totally overcome by Willys. Like, if you go to any free gift spot in the game expecting anything other than Willys, you're going to be disappointed. And that, I think it means they have recreated at least something of the dynamic of the actual internet within their idolized environment. But they're even better because the game is so wholesome to its fucking bones. When you receive your unwanted free Willys, you only have stock options in which to reply, but you have to say thank you, because the game's going to make you say thank you because it didn't raise no rude cars. And so you can only say things like, I love this, thank you, or you've made my day, thank you for this, I'll look
Thank you
after
for
it.
my free willies.
And then the final option, don't send thank you message. And so and so I just apparently like the players have even if the game itself refuses to kind of allow anyone to ever consider anything ever bad ever happening to anyone under any circumstances next to a car, players have found a way, I guess, to kind of ruin it, which I think is beautiful personally. Just flooding the game with this unwanted Jeep so that they can win spins to get more unwanted Jeeps.
It's amazing, isn't it? Finding within all of this generosity, within all of this kind of wanting to reward you for everything you do, and the players are still doubling down on the most boring.
What if I just did this one thing over and over again? And what if in doing so I just actively ruined an otherwise wholesome system? Gifting other players stuff, you say? Sounds like a great way for me to get rid of stuff I don't want.
Humanity.
What you gonna do about it? But yeah, so that's Forza Horizon 5. I'm looking forward to hear what more like expert car people have to say about it, because I think it seems nice. I like that you can switch off damage on your car, because I always feel a bit shit that like I'll get my Corvette to the end of a race and it'll be dented, and you can just turn that off. It's nice. Sound good. It goes vroom very loudly. I don't know if I failed my driving test 5 times. I'm not ready to talk about this.
I will assure you, Chris, that there is and there always should be quite a clear line between driving in real life on public roads and what happens in Forza Horizon.
Are you telling me that if I skid into a cactus in real life, that
you'll rarely be rewarded? Rarely.
No one's going to give me a prize. What if?
I don't think the Mexican government will be particularly welcoming either.
Right. Okay. I've got to make some. I need to
just write notes.
I need to rebook a certain holiday. Okay. And if you're at a music festival, how do they feel if you just drive a fast car directly into a crash barrier, like because you're not paying attention nearby a crowd of people? That seems bad as well.
Isn't it? I mean, I've always thought that it's so odd to put, of all the things cars, you're in your car. The whole point of driving is that you're in your car and you're going somewhere, or at least certainly not engaging with stages, concessions, kind of,
You got emotes. You
can wave out the window.
When you win a race, you stand on the stage next to your car and you do whatever emote you've preset. So I lost a race to a man whose name was something like, I think his name was like, his name was something like Total Tony 69.
No, that is such a driving fan game.
Yeah, and after having lost a race to him, he just dabbed very aggressively.
Oh,
and I was like. Oh, the other great thing is it's full of your friends' drivatars at all times, which I have found has been a unique opportunity to discover people I'm still friends with and tend to be on Xbox Live.
Yeah. That's another. That is actually sort of a real issue as well. I think it touches on the same issue as it automatically picking up the name that you have associated with the account, because you forget who's in your your friends list, because
right.
And there might be people that either you really don't want to see anymore, or maybe it's painful to see them,
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And then they are. Like it does feel like they're in the game as well. Like I've had that uncanny feeling. You see them and you go, "Oh shit, am I online? Oh no. It's just AI." But still, am I in their game? Oh, this is weird.
Yeah, exactly. Can I see this? Yeah, I had that exact feeling, because immediately after the game called me Christopher and then thrust me back out onto the racetrack, I immediately got T-boned by PC Gamer's Owen.
That was him.
and I was like, it has to be him. It has to be him. This is the most Owen thing could possibly happen. It wasn't, I don't think. I think. But that's been really funny because, like, I've been my console of choice has been a PlayStation for the better part of the last 10 years. And so I haven't really added anyone to Xbox Live since I first joined PC Gamer and Games Windows Live was still a thing.
Yeah.
And so all of my friends are like 2011, 2012.
Yes, it's very, my Xbox Live is sort of an era. Like, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, it's just sort of, very, very uncanny. Quite fun, I guess, in its own way, but like, again, it has this blithe sense that you want to be
blithe,
connected
isn't
to
it? That's the
people.
word, isn't it? Like, we're going to define what joyous sort of fun is for you, and we'll do our best.
Right. Well, I think this is the thing that Animal Crossing identified, which is that if you don't have a little bit of, not darkness in there, but a little bitterness in with the sweetness, it feels like a cult. It feels like a cult. And I think Forza Horizon feels like a cult. And I think the end game of feeling like a cult is it feels like everyone's already dead. You know what I mean? And like, we're here in just sort of like some kind of, kind of Technicolor car bardo waiting for the big plane to take us to hell.
Poor old Mexico.
No, I mean, Mexico's beautiful. I mean, whatever comes next, right? Like, is this my final spin of the wheels, of the wheel spin before I discover my fate? I don't know. It feels desperate for a twist like that, and I know it's not coming. In any case, it's full of willies. That is all the opinions I have about Forza Horizon 5 for now.
Well, I suppose that marks all the things we have to say, all the takes that we have for this this podcast. You can hang out with us and our community on our Discord channel. You can find the address for our Discord channel, which is very nice and it's very friendly, full of lovely, smart people that you would do well to interact with. You'll find the link for that at our website, which is crateandcrowbar.com. You can tweet to us at Crate and Crowbar. We are currently, normally in this part of the pod, we would be doing questions from questions. Questions is up on blocks at the moment. It's not at the car festival having a nice time because we're just
it's in car hell.
It's in car, the bit in between hell and heaven. Purgatory.
It's in Cargatory.
We're rethinking. We've kind of answered all the questions potentially, and we're just rethinking about how we want to interact with you, our lovely listeners. So if you have any thoughts about the ways that you'd like to interact with us, to play a part on the show, you can send that suggestion to us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. We will review it and we will think about it, and we'll have more news on all that another time. You can also listen to the show on YouTube, where you'll find our various other spin-off projects. You'll find that at youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. The Crate and Crowbar is kindly funded by our Patreon backers, our kind and lovely Patreon backers. If you'd like to know more about supporting our podcast and its spin-offs, visit us at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. I just note that these days, we are only charging every other week for our podcast, the Games Podcast, which we imagine that most people signed up to listen to. Because on the off week, on the odd week, or maybe it's the good week, we do lock-ins, which have a variety of different topics. The last one was on June. There have been ones on the Green Knight and other things. Eclectic. At the moment, we are not charging for those because we appreciate that you maybe didn't sign up to listen to those specific subjects. But anyway, visit Patreon and you'll find out a bit more. I think Christopher.
Hi.
I think that's it.
Hi.
I think that's all the things.
I think it might be.
Yeah.
Well then,
I would like to wish everybody well, and thanks for listening.
Hope you're okay.
Hope you're well.
And thanks for listening.
Everybody.
Vroom, vroom.